Welcome to Premium Cashflow Real Estate Investing Podcast with Sakar Kauli. During this program, you will hear guest experts sharing their experiences, best practices, and market insights. We discuss investing in multifamily apartment complexes and how a busy professional can passively invest hassle-free in various opportunities. Your host, Sakar Kauli, owns millions of dollars of assets and has done thousands of value-add projects over 20 years now. So listen in for insights. Here's your host, Sakar Kauli.
Welcome to another edition of Premium Cashflow Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of having Mr. Dave Zook. Dave Zook is the founder president with the Real Asset Investor Group. And under that umbrella, Dave owns and operates assets well over 100 million. Welcome to the show, Dave. Appreciate you taking time today.
Thanks, Sakar. Thanks for having me on your show.
Awesome. Please share some background, Dave, as to how you came about into real estate investing, sort of the lesson learned, and why you shifted your focus slowly towards multifamily and the syndication aspects of it.
Yeah, so I really was an investor all of my adult life, even before I was an adult, in my early teens. And so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I saw my dad. He was a very successful businessman. He invested in real estate, but he invested in such a way where he took the extra money from his very successful business and kind of parked it in real estate. He bought some land and some farms and some single family homes, and I saw him self-manage some of those single family homes. Mm-hmm. I just thought, you know what, there's got to be a better way to make money than managing single family homes. So I sort of made up my mind that I didn't want to be a real estate investor. And so I kind of grew up with that. And as I was building my businesses and, starting to make a lot of money, I got into a real tax problem. I got to the point where I had to pay almost $500,000 in tax.
Wow.
And so I really got to digging and learning and reading a lot of Robert Kiyosaki and his team and following them, and got to the point where I realized that real estate, specifically multifamily, can be a real tax shelter. And so that's when I got interested, and I went from not wanting any real estate investments to all of a sudden wanting as much as I could get my hands on.
Interesting. So in your childhood, was that like sort of the management aspects that you saw while operation with your dad? Was that you thought was probably sort of what repelled you as to not wanting into single family investments?
It is, and the timing was great for me. I mean, I built several businesses and really got that going, and it was in that time from 2000 to 2007, 8, 9, 10, mm-hmm. And it was only in about 2010 when I really got serious about owning commercial real estate. And so I'd like to think that I've been smart enough to not get caught up in that craze of 2005, 6, and 7, and
sure.
And start investing then. But it was good timing. I mean, it was a time when obviously looking back at 2010, nobody knew it, or
sure.
Everybody knows it now. Looking back to 2010, oh yeah, we should have bought all the multifamily we could get our hands on.
Right.
But those were scary times back then.
Right.
2008, 9, and 10, the world didn't know what was going to happen next.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Everybody ran away thinking the world is coming to an end. And
yeah.
I think very select few realized, the power of the deals that were around,
Yeah. I wish we could buy multifamily like we were back then. So
Absolutely.
No, just, timing was great. And we got into a lot of multifamily. And then from there, I got into some other asset classes and for me, I'm an investor, and it doesn't have to be multifamily. It doesn't have to be a specific asset class. It has to do what I want. It has to fulfill a purpose that I'm looking to fulfill. whether that be wealth creation through appreciation, whether that
Sure.
be cash flow, or whether that be tax protection through depreciation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you definitely touched upon the several pillars of investing and wealth creation. As I am personally also invested into a few other franchises just other than real estate, so I can relate to that very fact that you're looking sort of a mindset from a entrepreneur, that you're looking that, hey, where's the opportunity where it makes sense to create wealth and shelter some and get some tax benefits. So I totally agree with you. So moving on, as far as the multifamily syndications, Dave, please share with us, like, how did that come about? How was your first multifamily syndication, as far as how you structured it and things like that?
Well, the way I structured, when I first bought some on my own, the way I structured it is really, I just bought them for myself. I got into this space. I got chased into multifamily because I had a tax problem.
Tax problem.
So I started buying them on my own.
Sure.
And I bought a couple hundred units on my own, and eventually ran out of money. And of course, there were still good deals in the marketplace. There was still, we had a good team on the ground in Memphis, and there was opportunities around. So it got to the point where this next deal came along, and I went out and raised the money. And it was through a series of events. I learned a lot about syndication. I ran into people who were having trouble placing capital and getting any kind of return for it. And I just kind of connected the dots, and I thought, man, this could work. So
absolutely.
It was really just, running out of my own money and then trying to figure out how to still do deals and bring other people into the deal.
Absolutely. And as you rightfully said, that I think the more you invest, you are low on capital and the opportunities are still there. And sometimes even bigger the opportunities, the amount of equity raise and things like that has to be done, it certainly becomes a strain. And that opens the doors to syndications, basically. So in your first syndication then, Dave, what was sort of the size of your deal? How did you structure it as far as general partnership, limited partnership? Technically, how did you go about that?
Yeah, so I think the first deal that we syndicated, I needed to raise $850,000 to do a $3 million deal.
I see.
And pretty typical on the syndication side. I mean, we did a 75-25 split. 25% going to the GP or the management, 75% going to the investors. Right. So pretty typical of what you see out there in syndication. But we put the deal together, and investors liked it. They came back for more. They wanted to do more deals, and they told their friends, and it sort of grew organically for a while. And it just kind of, I never really got into real estate investing thinking that I was going to be a syndicator. It sort of just naturally happened.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think moving on, I know, Dave, you are sort of very much in tuned into different asset classes, whether it is self-storage space, ATM, and your newest project as far as coal and the shale oil out of that. Let's maybe take step by step. For example, self-storage space, that is extremely appealing considering the history as to how it operates and things like that. Could you share with our listeners why you like self-storage and what sort of insights you have gained with your association through self-storage?
We have a modular building business up here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In fact, Lancaster is sort of the capital of the United States for
manufacturing,
modular buildings, storage sheds, garages, and all that. Well, we have one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the area in Lancaster, and it's our family business. And so back in the day, I was in my early 20s, and I was delivering buildings down to one of our dealers, and he had a big self-storage facility. And he told me, we got to talking, because I was always, even at that age, I was always very interested in business. And he got to telling me, about this business model. And he said, man, it's the easiest way to make money ever. And so I never forgot that. And, then I got busy. I was building my businesses and, investing in multifamily. I never really had a good entry point and didn't know the right people to team up with. And it was only about a year or two ago where some folks in my network they introduced me to a really good self-storage operator.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to really do some due diligence on the team. I had them come up and meet a good friend of mine who was also deep into the self-storage space. In fact, he was the chairman of the board for the National Self-Storage Association.
Wow.
And got these two guys together, and he and a mentor of mine interrogated them for an hour and a half. And at that point, then I flew down to see their operation and look at what they were doing. But it was just, we connected. I liked the team. I liked the asset. Look, whenever you can have self-storage as an asset class that does really well in times of turmoil or turbulence, people are getting laid off from their jobs, people are moving, divorced, when slowdown in the economy, that's when self-storage typically shines. When you look back historically, self-storage does really good in those times. Now, if you can have an asset class that does really well in good times and does even better in bad times, I like that.
You want to know more about it, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, looking at the timing we're in, we've been in a bull market now for 10 years.
Absolutely.
We all know that there's a slowdown coming, whether it comes next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever. We all know it's coming. And if you can position yourself into an asset class that does well throughout a recessionary period or downturn, I like it. And I want to get in that position.
Sure. So other than the economic benefits there, Dave, is it something that it is always occupied? It is a sort of a low entry as far as per unit goes and things like that. Is that sort of some of the economic factors around self-storage that are also appealing in that sector?
Well, so not every self-storage facility does great. I mean, you need a good team that knows how to run self-storage.
Right.
So I like to look for great team players. I like to look for people that, this is all they do. My self-storage team has been doing this for 30 some years, and this is all they've done. They haven't run, they're not like me and run, several different businesses and invest in several different asset classes. They have their one thing, and they're really good at what they do. So I think that's important going into any deal and into any asset class, is finding a team that's really good at what they do.
Right. Awesome. So you think always that having that focus and a team dedicated and having that long experience is some of sort of the key points that you look for, other than just the pure asset class?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean, a bad team will, they'll screw up a good asset.
Right. So as far as the ATM space, Dave, I know there are a lot of ATMs all around in shopping centers and your neighborhood stores and things like that. How does that class operate? Why that ATM asset class appeals you? Could you maybe give us some salient points around that?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, people used to go to the bank on a Friday night, and they used to, they used to get a check from their employer, and they used to go to bank on a Friday night. They used to deposit the bank, and then they, take some cash out for the weekend or for the next week or two. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. People get paid via ACH. My argument to brick and mortar banks is you really don't need them anymore. With online banking, with ATMs, with all the technologies, why have brick and mortar banks? Well, most of our kind of not tenants, but most of the people that use our ATM machines are not people that would invest in our ATM machines. They can't. They're lower income folks.
Sure.
That's how these people bank. And so when you realize who your primary user is and how they use the machines, that's important. It's important to figure out your customer in any asset class or business.
Right.
But no, the way the investment works is we go out, my ATM team goes out, and there's a whole world out there of ATMs. How you have multifamily brokers, and you got, bankers, and you got, portfolio sales, and you got asset, there's a niche market for, in the ATM space. And it's no different. It's just a lot more smaller and a lot more niche-y. So, we go out and buy a portfolio of locations, and then we'll take those locations, we'll take the old machines out, we'll replace them with our new updated machines. And then we'll say to an investor, we'll buy a big portfolio of locations. Then I'll go out and find investors to come in and take bite-sized pieces of that portfolio. We break it up in $104,000 units. One unit is 7 machines. So then our management company says to the investor, we'll commit that you'll get 3,373 transactions for your unit per month. And your portion of the surcharge revenue is 63 cents. So you're getting, you're getting a well into the teens for your returns, and your tax benefits are, great. I mean, most of your cash flow that you're making from the asset or from your surcharges are tax-free because of the depreciation. So it's just a good combination of very good, strong cash flow and very good depreciation.
Awesome. So a couple of questions around that then there, that these ATM machines and those locations, like for example, let's say we find ATMs in shopping centers and, some of these other stores like Rite Aid, CVS, things like that, right? So those locations or those, are those spaces leased? So when you say that you're buying a portfolio of these locations, give us some insights into that. Are these locations sort of publicly advertised on LoopNet or something like that? Or is it like a different market as to how these locations come along and you get, or your company gets sort of that right to place a ATM machine in that location? Give us some mechanics behind it, please.
Yeah, it's a small market. It's a unique market. You got to be in the space to really know what's going on. I mean, most people think that ATMs are owned by banks. And, some of that is because a lot of ATMs are wrapped with, bank information. And that's just marketing.
Right. That's all branding there.
Yeah. So, that's just branding. And so, there's a market out there. There's ATM brokers. But the important thing to know is typically these ATM portfolios are set up on 5 to 7 to 10 year contracts. So when your contract comes up for bid, that thing goes out to the public market again, and you get to bid on it, and other buyers get to bid on it. So it goes out to market. If you end up being the bidder, the highest bidder, just like a multifamily deal, you end up with the asset. Now, we're not diluting. We're not creating a whole bunch of new ATM locations and saturating the marketplace. We're unseating somebody. We're going in and someplace where there were ATMs, and we're taking those out and replacing them with our own.
I see. So something that might be coming off lease, and those machines probably get out of provision, and you have your own machines that you are placing on. Would that be correct?
Yeah. And, there's some locations. I mean, we did a whole due diligence tour with a large investor last week, and we walked New York City, not the whole city, obviously, but we walked through the streets of New York City to different locations where we had machines. There was a deli that we saw. I mean, it was, prime location. It was right on the busy street corner. There was 2 machines inside the deli. That's how much transaction volume they get inside that deli. So there was actually 2 of our machines in that deli.
Interesting. So for example, then Dave, that someone is to buy the portfolio, right? What does that look like? Like how many machines? Is it like maybe 50, 100? How does could you give us insights into like how many units are there within that portfolio? Like what sort of returns you're talking, or are there any like tax benefits and stuff like that?
Yeah. So there can be, our last portfolio that we took over, there was, it was $10.4 million. There was hundreds of locations. But typically you'll see sort of 2 different players. You'll see the small mom and pop ATM player. He's the guy that goes out. He'll have 150 up to about 150 machines of his own. That's pretty much capped out for an individual. And then he'll service the machines himself. He'll keep the cash in those machines. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the big Cardtronics of the world. You have the big institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And so we play sort of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
We take institutional portfolios and we play with the big institutional players. We play in that space, but we take that then and we give the small to medium sized. I mean, there's some large investors too, but we open it up to individual investors come in there and invest with us in this portfolio. So it's a very unique model, and I don't know anybody else that's doing it.
Awesome. What sort of tax benefit does it have? Like, I know sometimes investors are investing in these things and they are looking for to reduce their taxable income. How some of that depreciation and tax benefits work in this space then?
Yeah, so normally it's the 5-year depreciation schedule. So
wow.
Let's say you have a 7-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a 5-year depreciation schedule. So that means that about 70 to 80% of your cash flow coming from that asset is tax-free.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So then moving on, Dave, into, you have some interesting innovative project around coal. Give us some insights as to how did that come about, what's involved into that space.
A lot of times when I get introduced to a new asset class, or even more importantly, a new team,
mm-hmm.
it's from investors in my network who speak highly of somebody, and they have this opportunity that, there's a chance for someone to team up with, come alongside, do some funding, and normally when I, even look at somebody, it's because I've heard some noise about this person, like, wow, this is a great team. We've done business with this team. We've had a lot of success with this team. It's what happened with in this space. And I got introduced to a team down in South Texas, and it's very interesting, sort of unique way to play shale oil.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do is we take coal and we run it through a giant distillation machine, or it's almost like a high-tech oven.
Mm-hmm.
We turn up the heat to 1600 degrees. We break down the coal to the point where we're extracting liquids, oils, mm-hmm. and gases from the coal.
Mm-hmm.
We have contracts for that liquid, and mm-hmm. we control the supply. So we control the coal supply. We own the mines, mm-hmm. and then on the back end we have contracts, and for $162.50 a barrel for this liquid, this oil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way that you can use our number one most plentiful resource here in the United States and extract mm-hmm. the liquids from the coal in a very clean, in a very clean way. I mean, while we're running batches of the coal and we're extracting the liquid, we're releasing no emissions. And so we're approved by the EPA. It's the greenest way I know of to be able to work with coal and extract the liquid, because really what we're doing is we're extracting the liquids that, if you were to burn off the liquids in a regular coal-fired power plant,
mm-hmm.
the liquids is the pollution that would go up in the air. We're extracting that stuff. And those liquids are used primarily in the cosmetic and pharmaceutical space. So it's a very, very unique market, very lucrative market. It's a great cash flow play, and it's also a very good tax benefit. It's an asset that gives you a lot of tax benefits, in that you can take 100% of the depreciation, or you can take 100% of your investment,
mm-hmm.
depreciate that in the first year, plus
wow.
you get a 15% depletion annualized going forward. So it's the most tax beneficial investment that I know of.
That's awesome. And how are the returns like? Are they based on like how the oil gets sold, or is that based on the gross volume of oil that gets sort of shipped or rather produced at the plant? Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah, so we extract the oil from the coal and it gets piped into our tanks, and we ship that down to, it gets shipped down to Baytown, Texas, and to
mm-hmm.
the refineries, and they refine it out and pull different products out of the liquids that we produced. Mm-hmm. And of course from there, they sell it to different pharmaceuticals, hospitals, cosmetic folks, and there's a whole other market for it.
Sure.
We really just produce it and then sell it to them, and then they go out and
Sure,
refine
that's right. So you are at sort of at that manufacturing side of things, where as soon as the oil is basically shipped, I mean, these might be some other wholesalers or distributors that perhaps in turn sell it to somebody else, but you are pretty much tied to the manufacturers in general.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what other niches you play in? These are some, we covered a lot of ground for, but what other things excite you, Dave? I mean, it sounds like a really wide gamut of things here.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about multifamily. We're not in the value-add multifamily acquisition phase anymore. We are building a 240-unit multifamily project down in South Lake, Louisiana.
Interesting.
Lake Charles, Louisiana, South Lake Village.
Mm-hmm.
I just like, for me, I just like doing business with great teams.
Mm-hmm.
I've done business with really good teams. I've done business with not so good teams. And, when I can get in with a good team, we can do a few deals together. I love that stuff.
Awesome.
And then, bringing my investors into a scenario like that, where you're giving them options, where you're giving them access to great cash flow deals. A lot of my investors are exactly where I was, a few years ago, where I was busy building my businesses. I was busy. I was doing really well, and I didn't have time to go out and research, investment ideas, research asset classes, all that good stuff. So, there's a lot of people out there like that have a busy, successful career or business.
Sure.
And I love connecting those folks up with good, solid deals.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. It's been a pleasure having you. I think so much of ground you've covered. It is, I think, every topic in general, definitely warrants more research and learning. Definitely, I'm gonna personally look up the coal situation myself. In fact, so thank you for taking time. I appreciate you spending time with us today.
No problem. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for listening to Premium Cashflow Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at premiumcashflow.com to sign up for weekly updates, research articles, and more. We will see you again for another great interview with an expert guest.